Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Mobiles, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Life Chiropractic College West, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 484 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Tim Noble. And if you want to hear about how to become a specialist in the chiropractic profession, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today we got Tim Noble coming in from Anaheim Hills of California. I'm really excited to talk to you about his life of chiropractic. But before we get into this episode, I'm going to let everybody know the big why. Why do we do what we do over here at Chiro Hustle? I was just talking to Dr. Tim about this before this episode got ramped up. So the microphone should be quite warm. I was just saying that we do this for freedom of speech, and censorship is something that's it's okay for some people, but for people like me, it's not okay. So we just want to keep banging the drum and keep on producing great content for the chiropractic profession. We also believe in medical freedom and family health freedom. Without that, you really have nothing. So chiropractic is a catalyst for that and for giving people solutions to their health. And I know a lot of our conversation today is going to be about outcomes, because I found that to be an important part of chiropractic. And but before we get into talking about Dr. Tim's story, I'm just going to let you guys know a few more things of the major premise of why we do what we do. The sacred trust is something that's important to us. It's important to chiropractic. If you guys want to know more about it, go and do a search on your favorite search engine for BJ Palmer's last words. And you'll learn a whole lot more about chiropractic than what you previously knew. And then we also believe in subluxation-based chiropractic. That's a big word in the chiropractic world that I just think we need to let people know what that big word is. And then we believe in innate intelligence and universal intelligence. And we believe that when a man or woman gets adjusted, it connects man or woman, the physical, to man or woman, the spiritual. So with that being said, Dr. Tim Noble, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to be on your show.
Yeah, big shout out to Michael Coates for putting us together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's a good man. He's really a good man. We probably wouldn't, I probably wouldn't be here with you today if it wasn't for, Michael being the segue.
Yeah, there's an old saying, I think it's kind of new. We've reinvented it. It's not about what you know, or it's who you know, but it's not about who you know, it's about how you treat who you know.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that addition, because that's very true.
And that's what if I were to go and talk to any like leader or marketer out there, people that are doing stuff to build their brand, so much has to do with personal relationships. And
100%. 100%.
There's nothing greater to build a chiropractic office or like a media movement better than building personal relationships with people.
I totally agree. I mean, if you're going to, it's the old, do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. But in addition to that, I think that you should try to treat people better than you would even expect to be treated yourself. And if you do that, that's going to come out in your spirit, and people are going to appreciate you even more.
I've experienced that firsthand. I go down yearly down to Mexico and speak to the chiropractic colleges down there. And, many times I've done homestays, and they will actually like give me their bedrooms, and they'll either sleep like on the couch or sleep on the floor. So I think we could learn a lot from other cultures in this regard too. So there's a lot to be said about treating other people better than what you would give yourself, because I think we have a lot to learn about selflessness. But I think that chiropractic is one of those professions that that's some of the foundation, at least as the profession developed. That's some of the foundation of like, the Parkers were out when Parker was like on the scene when he started out, and he was talking about give, love, serve out of your own abundance, just like Sid Williams was. And I think that the service part of chiropractic became really popular.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. You go to, whether it's a 5K, 10K race, what have you. I've been involved in you know dozens and dozens and dozens of those. Uh, and this is no slam on the medical community, but we would have to drag some of our medical friends to go to these things. Yet, I could call up the chiropractic school and I could have a dozen interns that are tripping over each other to come out and help. So, you know,
Yeah, and that I had this conversation earlier with a guy named Patrick Flynn, and we were
mm,
talking about like, making a, you know, success in this profession. And he's like, outcomes. That's really what it's all about. He's like, we can play a big game and saying we do things this way, we adjust this way. But really, the thing that really matters about chiropractic long term, I believe, is outcomes and
oh,
really getting people better.
I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I've been doing this for 36 years. When I got into practice, there wasn't, to say there was no science behind what we did. And I mean, I'm talking about published studies, that sort of thing. It was all pretty anecdotal. Mom and dad got better, so they sent their friends in. So that was our grassroots. Uh, and then from there, it really expanded into study after study after study, and which with that comes, more acceptance, not just from say the medical community, but also from more and more patients. I mean, for the longest time, we were treating 15% of the population. I mean, it's horrible when you think of the way they were treating their not just musculoskeletal problems, but their other problems too. So, yeah, it's come a long way. It's great to see.
Yeah, and for me, I think that the level playing field is what you said. If you get referred in and somebody says, "Hey, this worked,
Right.
you should try this." I've always believed in third party validation. Like,
100%. 100%. I mean, when you're young and you don't have patience and you feel like you need to advertise and do all these things, it kind of came down to, you realize real quick, if you're giving something away, then it has no value. If you have somebody that comes into your office that was referred by somebody else, I mean, they referred them to you because they got better. So you're not trying to uh, you're not trying to talk them into being a patient of yours. They're there. You just have to prove that you're as good as their friends said they were, as you were.
yeah, there's a stretcher. I know you probably don't know this about me, but a lot of people listen to our show knows that I went out and I did 600 spinal screenings in 36 months.
Woo-hoo, so you get it.
And I would tell people I'm not in the convincing business.
Yeah.
I'm in the healthcare industry, and if you
One,
want what we have, I know we can help you.
right.
But I was like, if
100%.
you want to sit here and have me like explain to you like the ways and why, I was like, just come in, see the doc. If it's the right place for you, you'll know it. If it's
Right.
not, there's no strings attached for further care. But I guarantee you one thing, you're gonna like us.
Right. Yeah.
So after doing that like thousands upon thousands of times, um, I think that people do want to like, draw straws sometimes as to why should I do that? Uh,
Hmm.
Or I've heard this, or I this is like hearsay type thing, like, and I'm like, well, how long have you been dealing with the thing that you have going on?
Right.
And then they tell me, I say, has anything helped you up to this point?
Hmm.
And then they say no, and I go, okay, well, you have nothing to lose.
But and it's funny about chiropractic in general. I'll be treating, some lady, and her boyfriend might be sitting in the chair, and he'll make a comment, you know, I went to a chiropractor, it just doesn't work for me. And I'd sit there and I'd look at him funny and I go, you know, it's funny that one chiropractor that you went to I mean, just like there's good and bad at everything. I said, so one chiropractor that you went to, that explains chiropractic to you. You know, I told one of my cops one time, I said, cops and chiropractors, we're a lot the same. He's like, what do you mean we're the same? I said, one cop does something stupid. That's what you all do. I said, some chiropractor does something that's not quite right. And that's the definition of chiropractic, you know? So it's just funny how, how people can perceive us, but you know, it's that's those kind of things that come across your desk are great educational moments for people, you know.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about this show is I've always wanted to get chiropractic outside the four walls of chiropractic.
Mm.
And I believe when I've gone to seminars and I've gone to, national events and homecomings and things like that, like everybody there gets it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, how can we get this message out to the people that don't get it?
Right.
And you're talking about that 15%. I've heard as low as 8%. And I don't think that's bad. I think that I've heard this other side of that story is like if there was a demand on chiropractic, there aren't enough chiropractors to see the people that need it. So I think that we can play both sides of that story. Like, can we create more great chiropractors to supply demand? And can we get demand in order to require more chiropractors?
Right. Right.
And can we take the pressure and noise off of the debt and the insecurities of finishing school to where people don't know how to like go about and build a business because all they want to do is chiropractic. And I think that the chiropractor we just need to make better outcome scenarios for the chiropractor. Like, okay, you're going to go to school. Well, you're going to guaranteed to go into this track and have this outcome because you've dedicated your career to becoming this amazing practitioner.
Right.
I think the blasphemy is we allow chiropractors to actually fail.
Well, and I think also, and really what, when you look at the schools, their main drive is for you to pass your national boards and your state boards. I mean, that's kind of how they look at things. And, which is extremely important. Obviously can't practice without that. But at the same time, I've had, literally hundreds of interns come through my office probably in all these years. I've got two of them in there right now, three of them in my office right now. And not as a general rule, but certainly a majority of them, when they'll ask, so how did you become so busy? I said, well, it wasn't like it started like this. I was like you. I was out doing spinal exams and I was, going to the Kiwanis Club and talking to them. I was going down to the golf course and showing them how to prevent injuries while golf. When you have, somebody told me one time, when you have no money, but you have a lot of time, that's how you build your name in the community. And, give, like we talked about before. And it's not about advertising and trying to turn every patient that walks into your door into some kind of a lifetime relationship, because not everybody wants that. Maybe it's exactly what they need, but they're going to have to come to that conclusion. But it's funny to me how some of these young chiropractors, they look at me like they're not just going to come walking into your office. I'm like, no, it's not build it and they will come. It's not like that movie. You got to get your name out there and you got to show that you care. And that you're that nice guy that taught me how to do stretching exercises at whether it's the retirement home or whether it's for the men's club at the golf course or the tennis people, whatever.
Trust me, I've done them all.
Yeah, you get it.
And I don't know if you know this, Doc, but I'm not a chiropractor either.
I did know that. I looked you up. I'm like, wait a minute. I did my homework on you.
Well, there's a lot to be said about what you were just like, talking about chiropractic life and business. Mm-hmm. And I love that. When you don't have a lot of money, you got to give your time.
Right.
And, I think that there's nothing greater than for a chiropractor to go out there and to meet their community where they are. And there's nothing to be said about spending your time to build a practice.
Right.
I think that so many times, if we wanted to really like gauge like success of this profession, it wouldn't be based on the who passes the boards. It'd be who defaults on their loans.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I think if we really wanted to look at the success of like the arc of health for the profession, we'd have to look at that as a more staggering number than whether or not somebody can pass the board.
Yeah.
And just being clear, I think that chiropractors should be clear to go practice like after they finish school. Like they went through 7 years of schooling to be able to be a chiropractor. So I think that my congruency mission of thinking is like, why don't we just do away with this whole boards thing and just let people go be chiropractors?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I like to have a standard, and I think I think the patients deserve to have a high standard. And just because you got through my class, and I just know some of the people in there that like anywhere, that it was not that I looked at it as being, it forced them to some degree. All you got to do is get through it. There's those that aren't going to put their best effort. They're not like you are, and not like I am. Unfortunately, it'd be nice if everybody was, but I didn't like it at the time, but I like it in the big picture. I like you to have to jump over that hoop to keep you honest, with yourself, and so you're not missing things in practice. At the end of the day, people deserve that. I mean, it's not all about manipulating necks and backs. I mean, you may have somebody come into your office with multiple myeloma, and you need to be the person that finds that, if at all possible. So
yeah, and I nowhere in here am I trying to discredit like information or education or knowledge. I just think after 7 years of going to graduate school and becoming a doctor, that's a good standard.
yeah, no, I agree with you with that, but yeah.
And I think that that's why we have such a collusion in the profession where people are confused as is it chiropractic medicine or the chiropractic physicians or the chiropractors. Like there's a huge like confusion when it comes to even people in the profession. Like, nope, I'm a chiropractor. I practice chiropractic. And then we get this like infighting of like who's superior, who's better. And I'm like, all y'all can adjust, can't you?
It's funny, you'll get a bunch of, it's gotten a lot better that I can see, but then I'm not in school anymore. But, it seemed to me, honestly, James, that somebody said one time, you can get a bunch of chiropractors together and they'll circle the wagons and start shooting at each other. And not a lot of professions do that, unfortunately, where people try to, have their own definition as opposed to, if you want to do it your way, this way, as long as there's no harm to the patient, I don't have a problem with
it. You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, Mango Voice, Life Chiropractic College West, and M-Sculpt. Let's hustle. Yeah, I think we could talk all day about the issues within like the ranks of the profession, but let's talk a little bit more about you as the practitioner. I'm curious. You said you finished up at 23 years old.
Yes.
Started practice. How did you decide that chiropractic was the right choice for you?
Well, I came from a family where, my mom and dad said, this is whatever you want to be when you grow up, just be the best at it. What kind of a doctor do you want to be? So I always looked at it as being, okay, I'm going to be some kind of a doctor. So at a young age, I was looking at the family doctor. I was an athletic, so I'd break bones and I'd look at the orthopedic surgeon and never really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be some kind of a doctor. And so I was a high school football player. And my buddy at the time, the quarterback, threw a ball really high in the air, and I caught it. But the defensive back, took his helmet back then, and you could kind of get away with the spearing thing. He stuck his helmet between my shoulder blades, and basically what I had was a subluxated rib head, and
Boy,
could barely breathe. I actually I went into spinal shock. I couldn't feel my arms or legs for about 20 minutes, and they took me to the hospital and did a bunch of tests. Everything came back, but I still had this sharp pain in my shoulder blade. I couldn't take a deep breath. Team doctor was an orthopedic surgeon. You did what he said. He sent you to physical therapy. 6 weeks of that. The guy was really nice, did everything he could do, and nothing, but it didn't help. And also back then, there was absolutely no problem giving high school kids, drugs to be able to keep playing and what have you. And so my mother got sort of sick of that after a while. And she said, and I'm going to send you down to Dr. Mack. His name's Dr. James McElhannon, great guy. I'm going to bring you down there. He's always helped me with my headaches. So in I go. He looks at my back, made some kind of a comment about, I can't believe you've been having this long. Laid me down, adjusted my back. Instantly I felt a good 50% better after not being any better at all. And a few more adjustments, I was back to normal. Back then, you went back to the team doctor, though, the orthopedic surgeon, to get because that's just what you did. And I'll never forget the guy. He says, he goes, "How do you feel?" And he was used to, he'd seen me 2 or 3 times during the process, and I was, no better. And all of a sudden, I come in and I'm good. And he kind of, under his breath, I hear him say, "Well, it looks like the physical therapy was finally kicked in," were his words. And I said, "Nah, not actually." I said, "I went to this and I barely got the chiro part out of my mouth." And I remember, I'm 6'4", I was 6'4", 235, at the time. And, he was this, not nearly as tall and big as me. And he stood up over me as I'm sitting in the chair, and he's pointing his finger, and I could just see the blood vessels in his head. "I told you to do that. What are you doing?" Just really upset with me. And even at that age, I could count 1 plus 1. And I looked at him and I didn't say anything, but I just thought, I got better after, I did everything you wanted me to do, and I didn't get better. And then I did this and I got better, and you're angry with me. And so, the way I interpreted it was, orthopedic surgeons mean and bad, chiropractor good. And then from there, Dr. McElhannon, Dr. Mack, I don't know, probably 6-9 months later, because I'd go in every now and then, get adjusted, have things happen to me. He asked me one time, he said, "Hey, are you a good student?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a really good student. I'm an A student." He says, "All right, I think you'd be a good chiropractor. So tell your dad to drop you off at my office, a week from Thursday at 6 a.m, whatever. I'm going to go speak at my chiropractic school. It's an open house. I'm going to bring you." It's like, what? My first thought was, I get out of school? That sounds great. And he was very successful. Okay, these are all good things. And so he picked me up. And back then there was still Cleveland Chiropractic College out in Los Angeles. And that's where he went. And he brought me there. And he basically ditched me. He saw his old cronies and started walking around. I was just sort of this junior in high school looking around. And I'll never forget, I found the cadaver lab, right? And I'm sort of looking from the door. I don't know what was going on. I see all these people in white coats, and they're around a table. And one of them turns around, looks at me, he goes, "Hey, come on over here." All right. So I walk on over there. He goes, "Here, put a jacket on him." I get in there close, and I see, holy smokes, it's cadaver. In my thoughts back then, it's a dead guy. What's this all about? So, at chiropractic school, we do dissection, blah, 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 blah. And so they put these gloves in my hands. They're all kind of chuckling, enjoying this, because they knew I was young. And one of them hands me something, an organ. And he goes, what do you think that is?" I said, "A liver?" He goes, "No, that's his heart." And I thought, I have got someone's heart in my hands. This is going to be the coolest experience ever, learning all this. So Anyway, they had kind of a volunteer thing when I was an undergraduate where you could go volunteer in this guy's office, and got through school and did well. And when it came time to be an intern, I hadn't seen him in several years. I just walked in his door. He owned a few offices, and I said, "All right, Dr. Mack, you got me into this profession. Give me a job." And he did. So, and that was the office I ended up buying.
What a cool story.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people that have watched my show before and seen the movies that we made. I also started going to chiropractor when I was 16,
Really?
due to a high school football injury.
There you go. Thank God for high school football.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. That's a great story, and I'm sure like when people hear this, they're gonna understand that it's a profession that's it's an amazing profession to be a part of. And to hear these stories and the chiropractic story that I get to hear 5 days a week, the interviews that we do, I get a chance to actually hear like people talk about, it's almost like a love letter to self.
Mm-hmm.
They get to like reminisce on these like early memories of why they do what they do. And it's really cool.
Absolutely. And I also, goes back to the service part. And I mean, if for this guy who, he was just my chiropractor, wasn't my uncle, for him to take an interest in me and to tell me that I could do something, you can do this. You'd be good at this. I can tell. And he was successful. So, why wouldn't I believe him? Can have such an impact on people's lives, so we, got to stop thinking about ourselves sometimes and think about the impact that you can have on other people that you come across. And, you talk about building bridges for this practice. I mean, he certainly built one for me, and, I'll be forever grateful to him, because if he'd have been kind of, I could have been the other way around. He could have been a jackass, and the orthopedist could have been a super nice guy. And, my road would have changed. Not that would have been so bad either, but it's amazing how much influence we can have on a young person's life.
Yeah. There's the old BJ Palmer quote. You never know how far reaching something you do or say today will have the impact on millions of lives tomorrow.
Well, I like that. I've never heard that, but I like it.
Yeah. And I think that Dr. Mack is a prime example of the impact. And now you're a prime example of the impact. And the countless people that you've had a chance to take care of over your career are the countless impacts. And that gives a chance for now, if we fast forward, it gives people a chance to do Google reviews. It gives a chance for people to do testimonials. It gives people that third-party validation I was talking about earlier when you're talking about, credibility in the marketplace. Well, I think that the power of chiropractic is always going to be grassroots. And I think it's always going to be from results oriented and outcome oriented, just like you getting hurt and going through PT for months. And if they could do it that you do, then they would do what you do, but they can't.
Correct.
So that's why chiropractic has cemented itself into this healing art profession. And I think that that's why you can't duplicate it. You can't replicate it. There's only one adjuster and only one adjustment that's happening, and that's by a chiropractor.
It's hard to do telehealth with chiropractic, When COVID was going around, and you had all these telehealth companies calling me, 5 times a day. I go, how exactly do I do telehealth as a chiropractor? Explain that to me. Well, you can teach them some exercises. Well, okay. And when that, bit of my knowledge is over with them, it's just, we got to have our hands on the people, and that's our claim to fame.
And if you look at the core words in the Greek breakdown, chiropractic is done by hand.
Right.
And the words were derived from doing the work by hands.
Right.
And I think that if people actually knew that, they wouldn't be like trying to get chiropractors to do telehealth.
100%.
So we need a huge re-education process within public awareness of what chiropractic is and what it's not.
Yeah, I agree.
So I know we're coming up on the edge of our time today. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you would have hoped that I would have asked you today?
No, really not. I've been blessed to be part of this profession. I'm not going anywhere. There is one thing. If I was when I talk to my young chiropractors, there's a lot of us, right? Maybe not enough, but there's a lot of us. And then you have to be able to set yourself apart. And so this generation, sure, they might be talking to their buddies, but what are they really doing? They're going to your website. They're looking at you and they're reading about you. Okay. They're reading about chiropractic, but they're reading about you. Why do I want to go see you if I don't know you from any different than everybody else, say on my insurance list or in my neighborhood, whatever the deal is? And so I'm boarded in sports medicine. I'm a board certified chiropractor. I'm a diplomat of the American Chiropractic Board of Sports Physicians. And that's a big deal. That's a 3-year program. And back to our, very difficult to get through. That's why, there's 60,000 of us chiropractors in the country, yet there's less than 200 of us that have gone through that program. Okay. And so when you can have that background and that knowledge, whether the guy hurt himself in his backyard or whether his son got hurt on the football field, whatever it is, that just gives you more credibility in a lot of people's minds. And there's other specialties too. And I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's just something, as far as from my story, because I don't know how many times I've said, as somebody has been referred in or whatever, I'll say, let me tell you a little about myself. And probably half the time when I go into that little diatribe about, being a sports chiropractor, they go, yeah, I know. I already looked it up. That's why I'm here. So makes me feel like all that extra schooling and stuff I did was worth it, for at least to get them in the door.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about what you're doing, man. I appreciate you being our guest today. It was a real good conversation about some of the good, the bad, the ugly chiropractic. Talked a little bit about your career. Would you mind closing us out with a miracle story, something you've seen in your clinic over the years that you think might inspire our listeners?
Sure. I'll give you one that the one that I just still makes me shake my head, and it's not an adjustment story. I've got those are the kind that happen every day in the office. The guy with the huge herniated disc that gets better and doesn't need surgery or what have you. But a quick miracle story was, I'm real big on using an Erconia laser. Okay, I've been using their lasers for about 22 years now. When they first, they probably had them out for 5 years or something. So at a conference, a bunch of my sports medicine guys said, you need to buy this thing. And they've been telling me that for 2 or 3 years. And they're expensive. And, I've been doing this for a while. Do I really need to do that? And anyway, I finally went, okay, the science supports it. So that was on a Sunday, come home from the conference Monday. And this lady that I treat, she can't hardly move. I've treated her before. Her back went out. Bottom line, she had been carrying her 13-year-old son up the stairs. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? She said, well, what you don't know is he has a condition called mitochondrial myopathy. And I go, what's that? She goes, don't feel bad. Nobody knows what it is. I had to find a geneticist from USC because everybody thought he'd had a stroke. So every 3 months, her son would totally just basically melt into a puddle of himself. He could speak and he could breathe, but he had absolutely no muscle strength. It'd be like 90% less. And she'd have to put him in a wheelchair. And about 3 weeks later, it would go away on its own. And then 3 months later, it would recur. And so, and most of them would kind of, quote unquote, grow out of it after puberty. Some of them actually die of the condition. There are 3,000 of these in the world. So it wasn't like anybody was coming to their aid, really. And so I thought, all right, mitochondrial myopathy. Well, this laser helps the mitochondria. Let me just see what happens. So this kid gets literally wheelchaired into my office. He's laying sideways in the chair like a stroke victim. Never used this laser on anybody. I pick him up, literally lay him on his stomach, use the laser up and down his back for about 5 minutes. He gets up and walks out of my office. It's like 90% better. that was a pretty big miracle, just watching this kid. And so what would happen is every 3 months he would get that way. He would roll in, or she would roll him in. I'd adjust him, I'd laser him, and he'd push his own wheelchair out the door. So that was something I wish back then we had cameras on our phones, to see the expression of patients in the waiting room.
Yeah, it's a really cool story, whether it's you finding success with this young man or you finding that getting your rib fixed might turn you into a chiropractor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Tim, thank you for being our guest today. It was a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me to be on Chiro Hustle. You're doing great things over here. You really are.
Well, I appreciate that too. And your episode 484 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. And I'll close out by telling everyone, you're just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you, Doc.
Take care.
Thanks for making time. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.